You are watching The Bible Witness.
I was born in a time of silence from God. My people, the Israelites, brought foreign idols into his house and pushed aside the words of truth. God saw it all, so he gave us into the hands of the Philistines. We became captives in our own land, humiliated, bound, and helpless. But somewhere in a quiet field at dawn, God began to speak again. My mother was out working the soil alone as she always did. She had no idea her life was about to change. A messenger stood before her, radiant, unlike anyone she had ever seen. He wore white and silver, his wings shining, a sword at his side.
You will conceive and give birth to a son. He will be set apart to God from the womb. He will begin to save Israel from their enemies.
She ran to tell my father. He wanted to believe her, but doubt clouded his face. Still, they prepared an offering. A goat was laid on the altar. My father lit the flame. It rose high, wild, and hot. My mother stared into the fire, searching, waiting. Then, the angel appeared again, standing in the heart of the fire, untouched.
You must not drink alcohol or eat dirty food during pregnancy. Do not cut your son's hair for the rest of his life.
My parents were too overwhelmed to speak. Since then, everything had changed. I was born in a quiet place, far from the noise of the cities. My mother followed everything the angel told her. No wine, no unclean food, no razor. As I grew, so did my strength. So as my reputation. My family has been happy for a long time. One day, I was walking through the market. The sun was strong, the streets were crowded, and people were busy with their day. I wasn't looking for anything. But then I saw her. Her clothes were fine, her hair golden, and she moved with quiet grace. My eyes locked on her. I couldn't look away. She turned just for a moment, and our eyes met. Something pulled at me. I didn't know her name, didn't care where she was from. I only knew I wanted her. I walked toward her. When we stood face to face, we didn't speak. She looked at me, and I looked at her. From that moment, we belonged to each other. That night, I sat down with my parents and told them what I wanted. My father didn't answer, but I saw his hands tighten around his staff. My mother turned to him, confused. She didn't know what to say.
Please let me marry her.
My parents looked at me for a long time, then sighed and gave a small nod. We were getting married. I tried some clothes on. I rarely cover my body, but this is my wedding. We stood in front of the altar and held hands. She looked at me, and I looked at her. We were husband and wife. That night, the tent was full. Our Philistine guests drank and laughed. One spilled wine on the floor. They tore meat with their hands like animals, fighting like children. I watched them from across the table. They looked like pigs to me. Let me now put forth a riddle unto you.
Speak forth your riddle, that we may hear it.
If ye can certainly declare it me within the 7 days of the feas, then I will give you 30 sheets and 30 change of garments. But if ye cannot declare it me, then shall ye give me 30 sheets and 30 change of garments.
Put forth thy riddle, that we may hear it.
Out of the eater came forth meat, and out of the strong came forth sweetness. They looked at each other, puzzled. One scratched his beard, thinking hard. Another leaned in and whispered to the man beside him. My wife looked at me from across the table, awkwarded.
What could this mean?
I sat back in my chair, for I knew they wouldn't solve it. They couldn't solve the riddle. Day after day, they sat together but couldn't figure it out. They grow angry. Then one of them have got an idea. On the 7th day, they went to her.
Entice thy husband, that he may declare unto us the riddle. Lest we burn thee and thy father's house with fire. Have ye called us to take what we have? Is it not so?
She came to me crying. I hate when she does that.
Thou dost but hate me, and lovest me not. Thou hast put forth a riddle unto the children of my people, and hast not told it me.
Behold, I have not told it my father nor my mother, and shall I tell it thee? She broke down crying right in front of me.
If thou lovest me, tell me the secret.
I looked down. I didn't want to speak. Her tears dropped onto her hands. I turned away. I couldn't look at her anymore.
Surely thou lovest me not.
I told myself to hold firm, to wait it out. But she was relentless. Day after day, the same question. I tried to shut it out, pretend I didn't hear. Her tears weren't just drops. They were pressure. The way she leaned in, how her voice cracked, it chipped away at me. I started to wonder if I was being cruel. I wanted to believe she cared. But part of me knew. Something deeper felt off. Still, her crying didn't stop. I began to break. I just wanted silence, peace. I wanted it over. Is that how marriage supposed to be? Behold, I will tell thee the secret. Eventually, I submitted to her. I was walking alone through the forest. The trees were tall and quiet. Then I slowed down. Something didn't feel right. I looked to the side. The bushes were moving. A lion jumped out. I stepped back just in time. It didn't see me at first. I crept behind it. Then we faced each other, just a few steps apart. It crouched low, ready to attack. I didn't move. When it charged, I dodged to the side. As it passed me, I grabbed its mane. We crashed to the ground. Its body slammed into mine. I held its mouth, my arms locked tight. Then I pulled with both hands, forcing its jaws apart. My muscles burned. Sweat ran down my face. Finally, it stopped moving. I stood up beside it. I was out of breath, staring at what I'd done. Sometime later, I came back. The body was still there, but something was different. I walked closer. Bees had made a hive inside its bones. I knelt down, reached in. They covered my arms. I took some honey and tasted it. It was sweet. I smiled. I filled a couple of jars with it. They were full, and the bees kept coming. When I gave the jars to my parents, I never told them where it came from. She got up fast. I could see something was wrong.
He hath told me the secret.
The soldiers ran down the street to spread the word. By sunset, they were all waiting for me at the gate.
What is sweeter than honey?
And what is stronger than a lion?
If ye had not plowed with my heifer, ye had not found out my riddle. They tricked me, so I went to pay my debt the way I said I would. I found other Philistine drinking at a tavern. I walked in. One by one, I knocked them down, and I took their clothes. 30 sets, just like I promised. They were drinking in the tavern when I came. I opened the door. I walked in and dropped the clothes. No one said a word. I turned around and left. I came back for her. She was standing there at the altar, but not with me. The guests were smiling, drinking, like it was just another wedding. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. I walked straight down the aisle. They moved out of my way. My hands were clenched. I was trying not to explode. I slammed my hand on the table. The cups spilled. Someone jumped back, knocked over a chair. I grabbed the table and flipped it. She backed away. Her new groom stepped in front of her.
Why have you come? This is no longer your wife.
I took her as my wife. Why did you give her away?
I thought you utterly hated her. I gave her to your companion. Take her younger sister instead. She is fairer than she.
Both enraged and broken. I turned around and walked toward the door. I didn't look back. That night, the land was still, but I wasn't. I'd caught wild animals, tied fire to their tails, and let them loose. Their backs burned like I burned inside. They tore through the Philistines' fields, spreading my anger with every step. Even the bundles they'd already harvested, gone in seconds. I made sure the fire reached the olive trees too. I wanted them to feel it everywhere. The whole field became a furnace. Their pride, their harvest, turned to smoke. I stood above it. I felt no guilt. I smiled. That was my revenge. They couldn't touch me, so they went after them.
Where is Samson's wife?
Please, we meant no offense.
You helped him burn our fields.
One of them threw a torch onto the roof. The straw caught fire right away. My wife was inside. So was her father. They had nowhere to go. They held each other, waiting for their death. No one stopped it. No one said a word. They just stood there and watched it burn. When I arrived, it was too late. They stood there like they didn't care, like nothing had happened. I didn't stop to think. I just ran at them. I hit one and took his weapon. Then more came. I didn't hesitate. I swung hard, aiming to break his bones. And when it was done, they were lying dead all around me. Then the sky opened. Cold rain, like the world trying to wash it all away. I went back to the ruins. My hands were shaking when I started digging. I found a scrap of her dress and a piece of her bone. That was all. I sat down and held her like it meant she was still there. But she wasn't. There was no fire left in me, just silence and the sound of rain. The Philistines came at dawn. From the hilltop, I saw their army setting up camp. Their commander stood in front of his tent with a sword pointing toward the hills. Then the men of Judah arrived, facing them from a distance.
Why have you come up against us?
We have come to capture Samson.
It didn't surprise me. After what I did to them, I knew they would come. The men of Judah didn't want to fight, so they came looking for me. I saw them making their way down the rocky path toward my cave. I walked out to meet them. I already knew why they were there.
Don't you know the Philistines rule over us?
As they did to me, so I did to them.
We've come to bind you and hand you over.
Swear you won't kill me yourselves.
We won't kill you. We'll only bind you.
One of them pulled fresh ropes from his shoulder. He stepped toward me and began to tie my hands. His hands shook. The ropes were new and tight, meant to hold strong. I clenched my fists as he tied the final knot. I stood up. My hands were bound, but I was steady. Two men took the rope and started leading me out of the cave. I didn't fight them. We crossed the open field. The sun was high. I walked, surrounded by men from my own tribe. Then we reached the edge of the Philistine camp. I saw the Philistine soldiers waiting. They looked pleased. They lined up in front of me, rows of Philistine soldiers waiting to take me. I was still on my knees, my hands tied behind my back, bruised and cut. Then I felt it. Something changed in me. The ropes around my wrists started to crack. The ropes snapped, strand by strand, and fell to the ground. I stood up. I looked down and saw a dried jawbone lying in the dirt. I picked it up. One soldier rushed at me with his sword. I swung. The jawbone hit his chest and dropped him fast. Another came from the side. I turned, hit his shoulder. He fell too. After that, they kept coming. I didn't stop. Every time one moved, I struck chest, neck, legs. I moved through them like fire through dry grass. I don't know how long it lasted. My arms burned. My skin was covered in sweat and dust. The ground around me filled with bodies. I stepped over one and struck the next. They couldn't even touch me. It was done. They were all on the ground. 1,000 of them. Blood on the dirt. With the jawbone of a donkey, heaps upon heaps. With the jawbone of a donkey, I have slain 1,000 men. I could barely breathe. I let go of the jawbone. It dropped to the ground and rolled in the dirt. The battlefield was silent. No more shouting, no more running. Just me. I was still alive, but I felt like I was dying. My mouth was dry, my lips cracked. You have granted this great deliverance. Shall I now die of thirst and fall into the hands of the uncircumcised? Then I heard something, a crack. I turned. A rock nearby split open, and water began pouring out. I crawled toward it. My hands hit the wet earth. I leaned in fast and drank. Cold water rushed into my mouth. I kept drinking, my face in the stream, my hands soaking. I didn't stop until my breath came back. My body still hurt, but I could feel my strength return. God had not forgotten me. The brothel was dark and warm. Women all around me. I drank to forget. The wine was strong. I held the jar to my lips and kept drinking. One of the women filled my cup again without asking. I let her. Then the curtain moved. She entered like smoke. She didn't smile. Everyone looked at her. So did I. She danced, moving like a bird. Her hips moved with purpose. Her arms flowed. She looked like she was hunting, not hunted. I was drunk, but I knew the difference. This wasn't just another girl. She reminded me of my wife. Her eyes locked in me, powerful, charming. Delilah came closer. The other women moved out of her way. She stopped in front of me. The music kept playing. She didn't speak, just raised her hand and touched my face. Slow, careful. I turned and grabbed her wrist, my hand wrapped around it tight, just to feel if she was real. I looked up. She looked down, then I kissed her. While I lay sleeping in her arms, they came, 4 Philistine lords.
Entice him to tell us the secret of his great strength. Then we may overpower him and tie him up to subdue him. Each of us will give you 1,100 shekels of silver.
She looked at the silver for a long time. And from that night on, her hands were softer, her voice sweeter. She asked more questions. The room was quiet. She lay beside me, her body close, her skin warm against mine.
Please tell me the secret of your great strength and how you can be tied up and subdued.
I kept my eyes on the ceiling. I didn't answer right away. If anyone ties me with 7 fresh bowstrings that have not been dried, I'll become as weak as any other man. While I slept, she went to the back door. I didn't hear it open. The Philistine brought her the fresh bowstrings. She came back quietly, walking like a shadow. I was still asleep when she wrapped them around my arms, one by one, tight, careful. She tied the last knot and stepped away. Behind the curtain, they were waiting. Soldiers with weapons holding their breath.
Samson, the Philistines are upon you.
My eyes opened, cold, alert. I pulled once. The cords snapped. They broke like burnt threads. I stood. They rushed me. I grabbed one by the collar and threw him across the room. The second I kicked down. The last one I slammed into the wall. None of them got back up. And then Silence. Delilah was on the floor, arms around her knees, her head down. I watched her for a second. Then she wiped her face and looked up at me.
How lucky you woke up just in time. You made a fool of me and lied to me. Come now, tell me how you can be tied.
I didn't answer right away. I turned toward the window. She waited. If anyone ties me securely with new ropes that have never been used, I'll become as weak as any other man. And again, I watched her face, but she showed me nothing. She met the Philistine in the dark at the back door. He handed her the ropes, fresh and unused. Later, when I was asleep, she came back into the room. Quiet, careful, I was still sleeping. She tied my arms again, each knot firm, the last one tighter than before. 3 men were hiding behind the curtain, weapons drawn, waiting.
Samson, the Philistines are upon you.
I opened my eyes, cold, clear. The ropes snapped the second I pulled. They were nothing. The men rushed at me. First one, I threw him across the room. Second, I kicked him down hard. The last, I slammed him into the wall. All of them dropped. And again, silence. Delilah sat on the floor, arms around her knees. She looked like she'd been crying. Maybe she had. I didn't care.
How lucky you woke up just in time.
Later that night, we lay together. The candlelight flickered.
All this time, you've been making a fool of me and lying to me. Tell me how you can be tied.
My eyes opened, steady. If you braids the 7 braids of my hair, I'll become as weak as any other man. I pretended to sleep. She slipped behind me, parting my hair. Her fingers moved through the braids. Hidden behind the curtain, the soldiers waited with their spears.
Samson, the Philistines are upon you.
My eyes snapped open. One man rushed in. I caught him instantly. A second came at me, straight off my elbow. I grabbed a nearby wooden frame and hurled it at the last man. Behind me, Delilah froze, eyes wide with fear. Beside her, I already felt the distance growing. Trust was slipping, and I knew love without it was fragile.
How can you say you love me when your heart is not with me? You've mocked me 3 times and haven't told me the secret of your strength.
I was exhausted, worn down by her persistence. My strength felt heavy inside me. No razor has ever touched my head. I've been a Nazirite dedicated to God from my mother's womb. If my head were shaved, my strength would leave me, and I'd be as weak as any other man. Her silence afterward told me everything. She had won.
Come up once more. He has told me everything.
My worth had been measured in money. That was all I was to them. I rested anyway, knowing part of me had already fallen asleep forever. The moment came when I was most defenseless. I had given her the chance. With each cut, what made me different slipped away. My strength wasn't leaving loudly. It fell quiet, like hair to the ground. Her satisfaction was the proof that love had never been the reason.
Samson, the Philistines are upon you.
I rose thinking I could fight again, but the power was gone. My own body betrayed me. The fist I raised trembled. I will go out as before and shake myself free. When they came, I realized I was already defeated before they touched me. Pain replaced power. Even my breath belonged to them. Bound by ropes, I felt the truth. I was just another man now. My head hung not just from weakness, but from shame. Being dragged away felt like being torn from myself. One last look, one last tear. Nothing could undo what I had given away. Our eyes met, but there were no words left between us, only silence. Her face told me she felt nothing. That hurt more than the ropes. She was left with her victory, but I wondered if even she felt its weight. As they took me into the night, I knew that God had abandoned me. They chained me to the ceiling, leaving me broken and bleeding. My wrists were torn open, the iron cutting deep into my flesh. A soldier came in, looking at me like an animal to be slaughtered. He raised the dagger, and I knew what he was about to do. I opened my eyes, too weak to resist, and waited for the pain. They gouged out my eyes. Blood ran down my face, and the world went dark forever. They treated me like an animal, forcing me to grind the mill. My eyes were gone, my body broken. I sank into despair, believing everything was lost. I sat in silence without hope. But then, I felt a light from above. God had not abandoned me. His presence returned. My hair began to grow again, and with it, my strength and faith. The Philistines gathered in celebration, filling the temple of the false god. They stood proud before Dagon, mocking my God. Their priests bowed to stone and gold. Their leaders raised their cups in victory. Thousands watched from above, waiting to see me humiliated. The guards dragged me in, blind and broken. The crowd roared at the sight of me. I stood weak among them, head bowed low. They laughed and mocked me from the roof.
Bring him forward. Let him entertain us.
Sweat burned my blind eyes. They placed me between the pillars. Let me feel the pillars that support the temple. I found them and rested my hands upon the stone. Sovereign Lord, remember me. Please, God, strengthen me just once more. Let me with one blow get revenge on the Philistines for my 2 eyes. My hands pressed firmly against the pillars. My fingers dug into the stone, muscles straining. I pushed with all my strength. Still they laughed, blind to what was coming. My body shook, my hair drenched in sweat. Let me die with the Philistines. I cried out without voice and gave all my might. The pillars cracked. Both began to break beneath my hands. The temple shook around us. The people panicked, screaming for escape. I pressed harder, my whole body against the stone. The pillars gave way. The roof came crashing down. Their rulers were buried in the ruins. Their false god lay shattered, and I, Samson, died with them. Yet in death, I struck down more than I ever had in life.
Moses is a very special figure because he not only received God's favor, but also endured some of the most terrifying punishments. Why would God nearly strike down the man he appointed as the leader of Israel? Why was Moses denied entry to the Promised Land despite his lifetime of obedience? And perhaps most intriguingly, why did his body become the center of a supernatural battle between an angel and a demon? Moses is one of the most revered figures in history, a prophet chosen by God to lead the Israelites out of slavery, the recipient of the 10 Commandments, and one who spoke directly with God. Yet his life is filled with mysteries, some so strange and unsettling that they challenge our understanding of him. These are not merely historical curiosities, they reveal profound lessons about faith, divine justice, and the hidden connections between the Old and New Testaments. Some of these mysteries even foreshadow events that would only come to pass centuries later. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any of our deep dives into biblical mysteries. 1. God trying to kill Moses. One of the most shocking moments in Moses' journey occurs immediately after God calls him to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. In Exodus 4:24-26, as Moses is on his way back to Egypt, the Lord suddenly seeks to kill him. This seems paradoxical. Why would God attempt to destroy the very man he had just appointed as the liberator of his people? The key to understanding this event lies in a critical covenantal obligation: circumcision. According to Genesis 17:10-14, God had established circumcision as the sign of his covenant with Abraham and his descendants. Every male in Israel was to be circumcised as an act of obedience and commitment to God's promise. However, Moses had neglected to circumcise his own son. This failure was not a minor oversight, but a serious breach of the covenant, especially for the man chosen to lead God's people. Moses' life was spared only because of the swift intervention of his wife, Zipporah. Realizing the danger, she immediately circumcised their son and touched Moses with the foreskin, declaring, "Surely you are a bridegroom of blood to me." Her decisive action appeased God's wrath, and Moses was allowed to continue his mission. This unsettling episode serves as a powerful theological lesson. It underscores that even the most chosen and anointed leaders are not above God's law. Moses was about to become the lawgiver of Israel, yet he himself had failed to uphold one of its fundamental commands. This moment highlights the absolute importance of obedience, demonstrating that God's law applies to everyone, even his most trusted servants. But Moses was not the only one wielding supernatural power. Pharaoh's sorcerers could perform wonders too. Who were these mysterious magicians, and how did they challenge God's miracles? 2. Secrets of the Pharaoh's sorceries. Before leading the Israelites to freedom, Moses faced a different kind of challenge, his confrontation with the sorcerers of Pharaoh's court. While the Bible does not explicitly name them, ancient Jewish traditions and later Christian writings identify these sorcerers as Jannes and Jambres. These two figures, mentioned in 2 Timothy 3:8, were said to have opposed Moses by replicating some of his miracles, attempting to prove that Pharaoh's gods were just as powerful as the God of Israel. During Moses' confrontation with Pharaoh, Jannes and Jambres used their magic to turn staffs into serpents, just as Aaron had done by God's power. However, Aaron's staff swallowed theirs, symbolizing the supremacy of divine authority over human sorcery. This battle of signs and wonders did not end there. When Moses turned the Nile into blood and brought forth plagues, the sorcerers initially replicated these miracles, but soon reached a limit where they could not match the power of God. This incident raises an intriguing question. Where did the sorcerer's magical abilities come from? Did the Bible in some way acknowledge that the Egyptian gods possess real power? The answer lies in the nature of their magic. Rather than being a divine gift from the gods of Egypt, their abilities were either illusions designed to deceive human perception or manifestations of dark demonic forces. The Apocryphon of Jannes and Jambres, an ancient text that expands on their story, describes them as wielders of secret knowledge, but ultimately being unable to stand against the true power of God. This confrontation highlights a recurring biblical theme: the struggle between true divine power and deceptive forces. It serves as a warning against placing trust in counterfeit miracles rather than the undeniable power of God. Furthermore, the failure of Jannes and Jambres foreshadows the eventual triumph of God's will over all falsehoods, reinforcing the theme that no human or supernatural force can stand against the Almighty. Yet, despite witnessing God's unmatched power over Pharaoh's sorcerers, Moses still longed for something greater, an intimate, unfiltered encounter with the divine. This desire would lead him to make one of the boldest requests in Scripture, to see God's face. 3. Moses wants to see God's face. Moses' deep longing to witness the fullness of God's presence stands as one of the most intimate and revealing moments of his spiritual journey. Despite his unique relationship with the divine, described in Exodus 33:11 as speaking with God face to face, as one speaks to a friend, Moses yearned for an even deeper encounter, but could a mortal truly behold the full radiance of God? This moment is recorded in Exodus 33:18-23, when Moses made a bold request, "Please show me your glory." In response, God declared that no man could see his face and live, but he granted Moses a partial revelation. Placing him in the cleft of a rock, God covered him with his hand while passing by, allowing Moses only to see his back. It was an act of both intimacy and limitation, a reminder that while Moses was uniquely close to God, even he could not fully comprehend the divine in its entirety. This moment holds deep theological significance. It highlights the contrast between the Old Covenant and the New, between partial revelation and ultimate fulfillment. While Moses, the greatest prophet of the Old Testament, could only see a glimpse of God's glory, the New Testament declares that Jesus fully reveals the Father. As John 1:18 states, "No one has ever seen God, but the one and only Son, who is himself God and is in closest relationship with the Father, has made him known." Moses' longing to see God finds its true fulfillment in Christ, who bridges the gap between the divine and the human. His encounter on Mount Sinai serves as a powerful reminder that while faith requires trust in the unseen, one day, through Christ, believers will behold God's glory in its fullness. But God's revelations were not always veiled. At times, they took tangible form. One such moment came in the wilderness, when Moses lifted up a bronze serpent, a symbol of both judgment and healing. What was the significance of this mysterious figure, later known as Nehushtan, or the blasphemous of Nehushtan? From divine judgment to divine symbols, another fascinating element in Moses' story is the bronze serpent known as Nehushtan. This mysterious object, initially crafted as a divine instrument of healing, later became a source of idolatry among the Israelites. But what was its true significance? Why did something ordained by God ultimately have to be destroyed? The story of Nehushtan unfolds in Numbers 21:4-9. As the Israelites wandered through the wilderness, they grew impatient and spoke against God and Moses, complaining about their suffering. In response, God sent venomous serpents among them, and many Israelites perished. Realizing their sin, they pleaded with Moses to intercede on their behalf. God then instructed Moses to fashion a bronze serpent and lift it on a pole. Anyone who looked upon it would be healed. This act was a test of faith and obedience, demonstrating that healing came not from the bronze figure itself, but from trusting God's command. However, centuries later, in 2 Kings 18:4, King Hezekiah was forced to destroy Nehushtan because the Israelites had begun to worship it as an idol. What was once a symbol of divine mercy had been corrupted into an object of misplaced reverence. Yet, Nehushtan held even deeper significance. In John 3:14-15, Jesus directly referenced this event, saying, "Just as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up, that everyone who believes in him may have eternal life." In this way, the bronze serpent became a foreshadowing of Christ's crucifixion and the salvation of mankind. What began as a simple remedy for a rebellious nation became a profound prophecy of redemption, demonstrating how God's plans often extend far beyond their immediate purpose, pointing toward a greater fulfillment in Christ. But Moses' intercession went even further. When Israel sinned with the golden calf, he made a shocking plea, asking God to erase his name from the book of life if it meant saving his people. What led him to such a desperate request? 5. Moses asked God to remove his name from the book of life. Few moments in Moses' life demonstrate his selflessness more than his willingness to sacrifice not just his leadership, but even his place in eternity for the sake of his people. This incredible act is recorded in Exodus 32:31-32, when the Israelites, having grown impatient in Moses' absence, created and worshipped a golden calf, committing one of the greatest sins in their history. God's wrath burned against them, and he declared his intent to destroy them entirely. In this moment of crisis, Moses did something astonishing. He interceded for the people, pleading with God to forgive them. But his plea went far beyond a simple request for mercy. In an act of unimaginable self-sacrifice, Moses offered himself in their place, saying, "But now, if you will forgive their sin, fine. But if not, please erase me from the book you have written." The phrase, "the book you have written," is often interpreted as a reference to the book of life, which represents eternal salvation. In essence, Moses was willing to surrender his own relationship with God, his place in eternity, if it meant that Israel could be spared. But God responded that each person would be responsible for their own sin, reinforcing the principle of divine justice. This moment is one of the most powerful foreshadowings of Christ's ultimate sacrifice. While Moses' offer was rejected, Jesus would later fulfill what Moses had attempted, giving his life so that others might be redeemed. It serves as a reminder that true leadership is not about power, but about selfless love, and that even the greatest human intercessor could not bear the full weight of sin. Only Christ could accomplish that. But even Moses, despite his devotion, was not exempt from God's justice. One act of disobedience cost him entry into the Promised Land. Why was this punishment so severe? 6. Moses cannot enter the Promised Land. Moses' death was not the only moment of divine judgment in his story. Another great mystery surrounding Moses is why, despite his unwavering service to God and his people for 40 years, he was ultimately forbidden from entering the Promised Land. This moment, recorded in Numbers 27-12, the answer lies in an act of disobedience that, at first glance, may seem minor. While wandering in the wilderness, the Israelites became desperate for water and cried out in frustration. In response, God instructed Moses to speak to a rock, commanding it to bring forth water. However, instead of speaking, Moses struck the rock twice with his staff. Though water still flowed, his failure to obey God's precise command led to severe consequences. Moses would see the promised land from afar, but never enter it. This punishment may seem harsh, but scholars believe it was about more than just striking a rock. Moses' actions reflected a deeper issue, a failure to fully trust in God's word. By taking matters into his own hands, he misrepresented God's holiness before the Israelites. Instead of demonstrating God's power through faith and obedience, he acted out of frustration, giving the impression that the miracle came from his own authority rather than from God. This event highlights an important biblical principle. Even the most faithful leaders are held to a higher standard of obedience. Moses, who had served as the mediator of God's law, was not exempt from it himself. His story is a powerful reminder that no one, no matter how chosen or anointed, is beyond divine accountability. His journey, though marked by triumph, ultimately ended in contemplation rather than conquest, a testament to the gravity of trust and obedience in God's plan. But Moses' story did not end with his death. A mysterious and supernatural conflict arose over his very body, a celestial struggle between the archangel Michael and Satan. Why would Moses' remains be so fiercely contested? 7. The struggle of Satan and Michael over Moses' body. According to Jude 1:9, the archangel Michael and Satan engaged in a mysterious struggle over Moses' body after his death. This enigmatic event has puzzled scholars and theologians for centuries, raising significant questions. Why would Satan desire Moses' body? What power or influence did it hold in the spiritual realm? And why was this conflict important enough to warrant angelic intervention? Some interpretations suggest that Satan sought to use Moses' body as a tool for deception. Given Moses' immense influence over the Israelites, his physical remains could have easily become an object of veneration, possibly even leading to idolatry. By taking possession of his body, Satan might have intended to manipulate the Israelites into worshipping their fallen leader rather than remaining faithful to God. This theory aligns with biblical warnings against the improper exaltation of human figures, no matter how great their legacy. Others believe that this battle symbolizes a far greater cosmic struggle between good and evil, one that extends beyond the physical realm. Moses was a pivotal figure in God's divine plan, a mediator between God and his people. His body then might have represented more than just mortal remains. It could have held spiritual significance in the ongoing war between God's kingdom and the forces of darkness. Whatever the exact reason, this battle serves as a striking reminder of the unseen spiritual warfare that unfolds beyond human perception. It reinforces the biblical theme that forces of darkness seek to corrupt even the most righteous, and that God's sovereignty prevails over all. But rather than leaving Moses' body to be found, God himself buried him in an unknown location, Deuteronomy 34:5-6. Why did the Lord personally lay his servant to rest, and why keep his grave a secret? 8. The only one buried by God. Beyond his confrontations and leadership, Moses holds a unique distinction in biblical history. He is the only man whom God himself buried. Yet, There is one distinction that sets him apart from every other person in the Bible. He is the only man whom God himself buried. According to Deuteronomy 34, 5-6, Moses died on Mount Nebo, gazing upon the promised land that he had spent his entire life leading his people toward, but was never allowed to enter. No one witnessed his death, and no one knew the location of his burial, because God himself laid him to rest. This was an honor unprecedented in human history. Moses had forsaken the luxury of Pharaoh's palace to stand with his oppressed people. He endured 40 years in the wilderness, leading a nation that repeatedly rebelled against him and even against God. He spoke with the Lord face to face. Exodus 33:11, something no other prophet had experienced. As the chosen lawgiver, Moses delivered the 10 Commandments, shaping the moral and spiritual foundation of Israel. He interceded for the Israelites countless times, even when they deserved destruction. In one of the most remarkable acts of self-sacrifice, he pleaded with God to erase his own name from the book of life to save his people. Exodus 32:31-32. His devotion was absolute, his leadership unmatched. Unlike kings and heroes who are honored with grand tombs, Moses needed none. God himself became his undertaker, a distinction that no ruler, prophet, or saint has ever received. Had the Israelites known his resting place, it might have become a shrine of worship, diverting their devotion away from God. By concealing Moses' grave, the Lord ensured that his greatest honor was not in a tomb, but in his lifelong service to God. Moses lived a life of unwavering faithfulness, and in the end, he was buried by the hands of the Almighty. No other figure in history has been granted such a sacred farewell, a testament to his unique and irreplaceable role in God's divine plan. Ninth, Moses met Jesus. Long after his earthly life had ended, Moses once again stepped into biblical history, this time alongside Elijah during the transfiguration of Jesus. This event, recorded in Matthew 17:1-3, is one of the most mysterious and significant encounters in the New Testament. But why did Moses reappear at this moment? What was the meaning behind his presence beside Christ? The transfiguration occurred when Jesus took Peter, James, and John to a high mountain where his appearance suddenly changed. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became dazzling white. In this moment of divine revelation, Moses and Elijah appeared and began speaking with Jesus. This raises a profound question. Why were these two figures chosen to accompany Christ in this pivotal moment? The answer lies in what Moses and Elijah symbolized. Moses represented the law as the one who had received God's commandments, while Elijah represented the prophets as one of Israel's greatest prophetic voices. Their presence affirmed that Jesus was the fulfillment of both the law and the prophets, bridging the Old Testament with the New. Yet, there is an even deeper significance. Moses, who was denied entry into the Promised Land during his lifetime, was now standing within it, not as a leader of Israel, but as a witness to the Messiah. This moment suggests that Moses' journey was not truly complete until Christ arrived to fulfill the ultimate plan of salvation. The transfiguration, then, was more than just a revelation of Christ's divine nature. It was a powerful declaration that God's plan, which Moses had helped set into motion, was reaching its fulfillment. Perhaps in the presence of Jesus, Moses finally saw the glory of God that he had once longed to behold. But Moses' story was far from over. Centuries later, he would stand once more, not in the wilderness, but alongside Elijah on a mountaintop, speaking with Jesus in a moment of divine revelation. And ultimately, Moses' role in biblical history extends far beyond his own lifetime. As the great lawgiver and leader of Israel, his influence shaped the spiritual and moral foundation of an entire nation. Yet, his presence at the transfiguration of Jesus, Matthew 17:1-3, reveals an even greater truth. Moses' mission was never just about leading the Israelites to the Promised Land. It was about preparing the way for the ultimate fulfillment of God's plan through Christ. During the transfiguration, Moses stood alongside Elijah, representing the law and the prophets, testifying that everything in the Old Testament ultimately pointed to Jesus. In that moment, Moses, who had once pleaded to see God's glory, Exodus 33:18, finally beheld the radiant glory of the Son of God. It was as if his journey, which had ended just outside the physical Promised Land, had now reached its true destination, not in Canaan, but in Christ. This profound event highlights that Moses' mission did not truly conclude until the coming of Jesus, who brought the ultimate redemption that Moses had long foreshadowed. While Moses had been a mediator between God and his people, Jesus became the final and perfect mediator, fulfilling the law that Moses had given. His story challenges us to reflect on our own faith, trusting in God's plan, even when we don't see its fulfillment. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Moses' journey, like this video and subscribe for more biblical insights.